Hello, everybody. My name's James. Welcome to Correspondent Week Friday, and we begin with the Cherries. Let me introduce you to our Bournemouth correspondent, Neil Grover. How are you, Neil?
Yeah, doing well, thank you. Thank you for having me back. I hope your week's going not too stressfully.
It's fine, mate. It's talking to human beings that are quite nice, which I don't always get the opportunity to do, mate. I like your background, which says "to get possible." What does that mean?
Well, together anything is possible. It's the I suppose it's the old club motto now, but it's sort of continued. I know that more recently with Bill coming in, it's been more um, always advancing, never retreat. But I think it's still the same idea.
So let's have a little rewind here,
Yep.
in terms of what's happening because there was a shocker, let's say, in your pre-season. So
Mm,
I'm sitting on the beach in
yep.
Bournemouth, literally,
Yep.
and Gary O'Neill's been sacked,
Yes.
and everybody goes, "What?" It was
Yep.
one of them where we always had kind of a little bit of doubts last year in terms of it was right person, right time after obviously what happened with Scott Parker. I know
Yes.
you were really concerned at certain points in sort of the autumn and the early winter. But then he did pretty well, where by the end of the season, people are going, should he be in contention for manager of the year?
Mm,
So, okay, you think what's Bournemouth going to do? Would it go a week or two goes past and the season finishes? Okay, Gary O'Neill's definitely going to be in charge again next season and probably deserves to be. Then
yep.
suddenly, out of nowhere, bang, sacked, and within probably an hour, everybody knew that Andoni Iraola was going to be the new manager. What was your reaction when you heard the O'Neill news originally?
So it caught me totally unawares as well. Like it wasn't something I was expecting. But with hindsight, it's very much Bill Foley, the new owner, if anyone hasn't seen it. The His modus operandi. He's done it at Vegas. He's with his Golden Knights. He's very not scared to change coaches. There's pictures of coaches literally leaving games in taxis, and that's how people found out they were sacked. So that in itself isn't surprising, but I think it took a lot of people by surprise. But when it happened, I think everyone's initial reaction was, okay, well, they're cooking something here. What are they going to do? Because I don't. My immediate reaction wasn't, well, O'Neill's done something wrong. It's more the club has seen a more progressive option, which turns out is the case with Iraola. I think my initial reaction was Potter? Question mark.
Yeah, a lot of
I
people
th-
was, yeah.
but I'm absolutely delighted with the direction they've gone in with a very exciting coach that I think brings us back more to the Bournemouth that Bournemouth fans expect to see. I think since Eddie left, we've kind of been a little bit not the sort of classic style of Bournemouth with the with the press and possession and all of that. Certainly under O'Neill, it was very like almost the opposite of that. Um, but now I think we're going to go back to what fans expect to see.
Yeah, it's got the first thing I thought of when that day kind of evolved with the news. It made me think of Southampton and
Mm,
Nigel Adkins and Maurizio Pochettino, and I've seen a lot of other people mention that. Whereas Southampton came up with Adkins, he'd got them through remarkably. I think it was consecutive promotions, wasn't it? League One, Championship. They
mm,
weren't even in the bottom three. I think if I remember correctly, they'd drawn 2-2 at Chelsea, having been 2-0 down. And a couple of days later, they sacked him. And that was wild. People were like, what's going Something's got to have happened behind the scenes. And what literally happened there was Southampton took an opportunity, much
yeah,
like I think your team has. And by the time we got to the end of that season and people had seen Pochettino Southampton play, Nigel Atkins, unfortunately, was a footnote
yeah.
because everybody had realized, right, okay, we've got a clear identity and a plan of what's happening. You fast forward another year's time and Pochettino's in the Tottenham job, right?
Mm. Yeah, and I think actually in a weird way we've done O'Neill probably a favour as well. I know it sounds bizarre, we've sacked him, um, but he's going to have left at a time in the season when he can go and have a rest and reflect on what he's done. His stock is as high as it's ever going to be with Bournemouth, realistically, unless he was going to go and do something incredible with us, which I didn't feel was likely. But he's now left having done what he came in to do, which was save us from relegation. And now he's very well poised for that October, November. When the manager changes start to happen, I suspect he'll be quite high on a number of maybe not Premier League clubs, but definitely Championship clubs lists. And rightly so. He deserves a chance at that. I just think he was getting a little bit found out at a Premier League level, but there will be teams in the Championship that rightly should be looking at him. And the fact of the matter is, had we have waited till October, where with our rough start, he probably may not have lasted anyway, and Iraola would not have been available. So we had to act now to get the man that the board want, and I've got no problem with that. You would do it with a player.
Yes, of course you would. So, it's harsh.
It's 100%. It was a harsh move, but football is a harsh business, and I think they've done as right by O'Neill as they could. He just got an extension by keeping us up, so he wouldn't have done badly from a compensation point of view, I would imagine, either.
You mentioned the start. Do you think in any way that helped push a decision? In the sense that I quite agree with you. I think I look at a lot of the managers in the league and actually think more at risk speaking to some of our correspondents this week than I did at the start of the week. But you do look at that run, you think those opening 7 games are horrendous. And you do think there's every chance you'd have started badly and changed anyway. Okay, yeah, I get that.
I think we've almost jumped early to get the man we want, which I think is a very progressive strategy. And I kind of see the first 7 games as almost a free hit. Now, our Iraola, as I'm sure we'll talk about, has a fantastic record against being an underdog against clubs like Barcelona and Real Madrid. Now, I'm not saying I'm going into those 7 expecting much, but if any manager that's got a track record of doing it, right? And it's going to take him, his style is so different from O'Neill's, it's going to take a certain amount of games for us to get rolling anyway. So you might as well get them when games that you'd probably look at anywhere else in the season, like Arsenal, and Liverpool, and you'd think, well, those probably are not. We're not going to have much joy there anyway. We might as well use them as a getting up to speed game.
Are you aware of how many points you got in those corresponding 7 fixtures last season?
None, I think. Looking at it,
yeah, scored 3 and conceded 25.
Let's not talk about the conceded when Liverpool's right there. So I think it goes as deep as because Everton away. Obviously we were done. Yeah, I'm just looking at I think you need to go to game week 9 before we won. Oh no, that was a draw. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Newcastle.
The answer is game week 14 is Aston Villa.
Right. Yeah. So there you go.
Which was obviously your opening game last year. Yes. So for clarity, West Ham at home, Liverpool away, Tottenham at home, Brentford away, Chelsea at home, Brighton away, Arsenal at home. I mean, you haven't even got the 2 Manchester clubs in there or Newcastle, and it still looks absolutely horrendous. And there's almost no doubt, Neil, that you'll come out those 7 games when you'll have more than 0 points. So I guess on a season versus season, you'll improve. What would you target from those 7 points?
So
7 games, sorry.
I think the first game, West Ham at home, is going to be crucial, and I suspect West Ham will think the same, looking at theirs as well.
Yeah.
Outside of that, are those next 6? I think there's 2 games in there, Brentford and Brighton, where we're going to have to try and get something there.
Both
right?
away, though. If they were at home, it'd look a bit better.
No, I know. And I think, I suspect one of those, Tottenham, Chelsea, Arsenal at home, I think we'll win one of those.
I've got a feeling which one it might be.
Well, yeah.
Arsenal in game week 7, hopefully, obviously.
Although our record against Chelsea is quite good as well. They're
Neil, the only team they beat in the last 3 months of the season was you, I think.
But historically, and prior to, I think Leicester was our best ever Premier League opponent, and then I think it's Chelsea second. So, but yeah, I mean, look, it's going to be grim, right? If we can get 5 or 6 points out of the first 8. Or first 7.
That's the reality, isn't it? The reality is if you come out of the Arsenal game after game week 7 and you're out of the bottom three with respect, that's probably success. Then coming into good fixtures, isn't it?
Correct, yeah, and that's how I view it. And actually, I think we were in a similar situation. In fact, exactly the same situation last year, where I think it was probably about fixture 8 again when our fixtures changed, and it was very much a case of right, let's keep our head above water until then, and then we can start to go. But what it does do is it gives us it kind of gets them all out, those horrible fixtures just done out of the way at the start of the season.
Oh no,
You
you got
take your
Man City away in 11.
Yeah, well, yeah, but you're always going. It's the Premier League. You're never going to have easy fixtures. But
No, mate.
I'd rather kind of lump them together and just be like,
I
right,
get
we're
that.
just going to take some lumps here.
Yeah, look, the flip of course is exactly what you said. Get to game week 8, which of course I think importantly from the fantasy perspective gives us a time to have a look at you and an understanding of what's going to happen. And then there's a really good run from game week 8.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
Everton, Wolves, Burnley. Yeah, sure, there's City away, and then there's Newcastle, but it does definitely ease up. You look forward to game week 17, like over the Christmas period. Luton at home, Forest away, Fulham at home in a row. There's some good runs backwards. That's inevitable with the start you've got, right?
Exactly that. And then I would say that Newcastle, we were one of the few teams they didn't get very anything off us. Really, we drew twice. So
Yes.
who knows? And it's always a tough game for Eddie, I think, coming back. So who knows? I don't necessarily see it with quite the same eyes that maybe the other 18 Premier League teams do.
Let's do an intro to this new manager then,
Mm-hmm.
Andoni Iraola. It wasn't someone I was familiar with, must be totally honest. But having looked at him, I'm very keen to watch you play, mate.
I think we're going to be exciting.
Mm.
I'm really excited for this season. I think we will be one of the more interesting teams. I think listening to just generally people speak, the two teams that people are excited to watch are us and Burnley.
Yep. Great.
And I think we're going to be totally different to what people have think of Bournemouth over the past few years. I think we're going to be close to what Eddie played, but I think it's going to be, from what I've seen so far, it's very much the Bielsa school, but it's a little bit less all guns blazing all the time, which I think is more sensible.
Yeah, the main thing I found was a more of a kind of hybrid zonal / man to man off the ball and there's triggers. It's
Yeah.
basically the big thing I found was the trigger was ball goes into fullback, everyone goes. So there's not going to be a hard press into centre backs
Mm-hmm.
where you're disadvantaged. But then once it moves from there, you have numerical advantages. Then in comes heavy pressing.
Yeah, yeah, and I think we'll see from what I've seen so far, the centre backs will look to get it. It's not direct football, but more direct than perhaps we have played before. So, and both of our centre backs, Senesi and Zibani, have shown that they can play that diagonal pass out, which is what I'll expect to see.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned direct football. Let's be really clear. Leeds were very direct,
Mm.
but nobody thought Leeds were boring or long balls. There's a
Yeah,
big difference between direct and long. And we're talking about direct here, getting the ball forward really
yeah.
quickly. I also noted, Neil, in the research I'd done, a lot of bias towards left-hand side attacking, which probably adds into the one extremely exciting new signing you have, Milos Kerkez, Jordi Alba, prime Jordi Alba regen, only 19. He's going to go straight in the team, isn't he?
He's in my team, and
He's in your FPL team as
he's in
well.
my FPL team, and he's
What,
in
with them fixtures? You're mad.
But game week 1, I mean, why not?
Game week 1. What about 2 to 7?
But he's a 4.5 defender. He'll sit on my bench. But
You say that, by the way. Literally recorded a pod with Suj yesterday where we did a wrap up of the teams, and when we was talking about Tottenham defenders, I said, forget that. You might as well go and get Milos Kerkez. He's actually literally exactly what I said.
yeah, and the thing is, like you said, he from what we've seen, I mean, he's a goal. He had the most goal involvements for a under 18 player defender last year in Europe. So he likes to get it forward. Everything I've seen about him, he's just such an exciting player. And like you said, Iraola's style is to be left side heavy. He's going to be probably working with Kluivert, at least initially, or Anthony. It'll be one of the two. I'm leaning towards Kluivert at the moment. And what they look to do is let the fullbacks kind of go along and then in, and then play a pass in to someone like Solanke on the penalty spot, and that's what they've been looking to do. And I think Kerkez could be an absolute assist magnet this year.
Yeah, it's quite exciting,
Hmm.
actually. If people won't be familiar with, is he Hungarian? I want to say maybe.
Yeah, he's Serbian born, but he represents Hungary.
He's already played for the national team, hasn't he? I think.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, he is really. I completely get it. Let's not beat around the bush. There's a lot of people. I ain't paying 4.5 for a Bournemouth defender with those fixtures at the start. When there's 4.0 as a start as I can have elsewhere, and also even like 4.5s like Levi Colwill, for example. Completely get that, and so it wouldn't be under consideration to start with for myself personally. But absolutely on the watch list, and more again for the offensive stuff than the defensive stuff. And this is what fantasy managers want, isn't it? Exciting attacking fullbacks that they can pick in their teams.
Exactly. And actually, West Ham fans will know him because he played. He had Bowen, from my understanding, in his pocket when they played AZ Alkmaar in the semi-finals.
They lost.
They lost,
twice.
but it's not. You can't put that on one player.
I don't think any team should lose to West Ham twice. It's a bit embarrassing. Neil.
I was just thinking back to our last year. But yeah, I mean, they'll know him and he knows them, which again is it's just an interesting little subplot, right?
Yeah. So is this going to be quite gung-ho or not? Because one of the things you mentioned, and I think a lot of people know this now already, is Iraola's results at Rayo in some of the bigger games are quite extraordinary. It's 10 points against Barcelona in the last 2 seasons. And they did briefly flirt with potentially qualifying for Europe last year, which I guess in terms of La Liga, they're relative size to yourself. So your appointment makes a lot of sense from that perspective. What is this? Are we going to get, because when we mention Leeds, we think gung-ho madness, right? On the ball, what are we going to get?
So from what we've seen a very limited sample, but I get the feeling that he's less wanting to be all out attack all the time. Now there is that, but I think it's a little bit more considered with when they look to release. So like you said, there are those points where they go, right, we're gone. It's one of our commentators calls them the red arrows, and they go. But I just get that, and there will be times when we are exposed because the fullbacks are so advanced and people getting behind us. But that's kind of what's always happened to Bournemouth. But I do think naturally our defence and things have improved anyway with some of the signings we've made, which I think will mean that we're not necessarily getting pumped like we did a little bit at times last year. But it's still going to be high scoring games both ways, I suspect.
Yeah, I think that the Leeds narrative is kind of right to explore that because he's very much a Bielsa disciple. He played under Bielsa at Athletic Bilbao. He was a right back as a player. But I think difference is key is that, again, there's that man and zonal off the ball and also the sheer work that you're going to put in. Rayo were right near the top in top 5 European leagues for winning the ball high, final third turnovers. But one of the trends that they had with them quite a lot was they would go really hard for 70 minutes and then sit off, whereas Leeds just didn't stop.
Yeah, and that I think led, long term. Obviously, that caused Leeds problems, and that's where I think Iraola has sort of tailored it a little bit because, at the end of the day, a season is a marathon, not a sprint, right?
But your lot are going to be doing a lot of sprinting, mate.
They're going to be doing a lot of sprinting, but yeah, but I think he's got a bit, especially with our squad size, he's got to be aware of load management, particularly again with such a young squad. We've got so many young players.
So again, the narrative is a full circle where this is interesting. The fixtures are rough, they're tough, but some of Rayo's extraordinary results, which has kind of got him the attention, is against some of the big clubs. This time last year, we sat here and we laughed about Erling Haaland potentially playing your team in game week 2. This year, you go to Anfield. Last year, we don't need to repeat it. What happened, everybody knows. But there's a lot of people looking at that as the 1 week to take Haaland on with a captaincy and go for Mo Salah. I'm interested to know, you've got Kerkez. Have you got Mo Salah at the moment?
Yes.
That's interesting. Are you intending to captain Salah against your team, mate?
Yeah, and now part of that is the traditional fan. Right, if I captain him, he won't go off, and then or if he does, it's win-win.
So it's psychological rather than the.
Yeah, but again, I think as we've just said, I can see a high-scoring game both ways. I think with Liverpool's current known defensive frailties, and we Atara ate Van Dijk for breakfast last year at our place. And I've not seen anything that suggests that he couldn't do that again this year. I think we'll get in behind them, and I can very much see us scoring. So, but equally, Salah always scores against us, always. Apart from last year in the 9-0, actually, having said that. But he normally scores against us. I realise what I was saying as I said
taking the piss, Neil. And to add insult to injury, did you not beat them 1-0 at home and he missed the penalty?
Yes. Yeah, he did, and I very much made a mess of my coffee that morning.
So Mo Salah always scores against you, except when they got 9. Oh, and the other game where he missed the penalty.
Yeah, but normally, historically, it's like Raheem Sterling's the other one. But again, he didn't last year.
Okay, that's interesting, and that will listen. Those who want to go with Mo Salah, that will please them hearing that in terms of the prospect. I do feel like it can go either way though. It could be one of there where you go there, and I don't just see you sitting off, right? You go there and try and press. If they break your first line and then they're running at you, it's Liverpool with their attacking talent. You're going to be in trouble. But you could get it right, like say Villa did in May off the ball in the first half, and really give them problems the other way as well.
I think what would be interesting as well with I've seen sort of Liverpool fans bubbling a little bit under the surface recently, and it's their first home game, right? Yeah, first home game. So what would be really interesting is if we get right up in their face really early, maybe score 10 minutes in or something, and then just don't let off. And I could see, I mean, I've been in that environment in big clubs where the fans just turn. I mean, of course they will, right? That's the advantage that we have as Bournemouth. 10, 12 of the teams in the Premier League look at us and go, what the heck are we doing playing these guys? And then when suddenly we score, it winds people right up. They think, well, what are we doing conceding to Bournemouth? Particularly the top 6, right? The big 6. So I can see an avenue where we score early and it causes them, it really gets quite nasty.
It's interesting. You've got Salah. Have you got Trent?
No, I had to make that sacrifice.
Okay, yeah. It's obviously difficult to fit the two in with Haaland. I get that.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, let's focus back on your team and have a little overview of the squad. So Neto's in goal. I take it there's no question marks there, is there? You've got this new keeper, Radu. He's not going to threaten him, no?
No, he'll be number 2, unless there's an injury, which there isn't at the moment.
Fine. And you obviously mentioned Senesi and Zabani. That's definitely, in your opinion, the first choice centre-back pairing now?
Yeah, Kelly's injured and will miss the first few games. He would be the only one that I would have put in there. Mepham's still around, but I wouldn't expect to see him as in the starting 11.
Yep, understood. Where's Senesi from? Is he Spanish?
He's Argentine.
It's Argentine. That'd be Spanish speaking, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And Zabani's Ukrainian, isn't he?
Yes.
Is there any concerns on a language barrier there? Just because both are quite new to England itself as well.
I've heard both of them have given interviews in English, so
okay, that's good.
That seems to be fine. Right, as is cool. Kerkez, who we'll probably speak about next.
Yes, I've heard him speak. No, I don't want to speak about him anymore. We've done the business on him. He's left back. We got it. I presume Adam Smith as kind of insurance right back at the moment, if you will.
Yeah, so I've got our back 4 as Kerkez, Zabani, Senesi, and Smith. At the moment, I expect we will sign at least one more fullback, probably on the right, just because Smith is 32, 33. But at the moment, I don't see any real changes to that. Fredericks is injured, as is no shock to anyone.
Has this left-sided bias been clear in friendlies so far? See, it's
The,
there as well.
yeah, the bits I've seen for sure. I've not watched all the minutes because like it seems to be the trend. You have to pay to watch friendlies, which I'm not about. So, but the ones I've seen, yes, very much so.
When you go to a stadium, you have to pay.
Sure, but I'm paying for the experience. I'm not paying to sit in my lounge.
True. You avoid the weather though. Right, central midfield does at the moment feel a little bit light on numbers. I'll throw a caveat to that,
Yeah.
that we are pre-recording on Thursday morning, and by the time you hear this, I don't know, Alex Scott might even be a Bournemouth player.
Yeah, there was a lot of chat again yesterday as we're recording this that we're about to pounce on that. I think I hate to think of it, but I think we're taking a little bit advantage of Wolves' issues to jump in there. But it is what it is, right?
Hi, Bradley Parker and our Wolves followers. Hope you're well today and feeling better after your fantastic 0-0 draw with Luton on Wednesday night. I heard Fabio Silva played well, if that's helpful to people. Would he go straight in the team, Scott, if he's signed?
I think he would be definitely in the rotation. And I think that's what we will see purely again because of that intensity. We're going to have to just have a constant rotation of midfielders, particularly with Scott, who's 19. So, like, you cannot expect him to play every minute of every game, right? It's not. It wouldn't be helpful to him. But at the moment, I've got Cook and Billing in there. Obviously, there's a huge gap there with Lerma going. Iraola said yesterday he wants to sign at least one more centre mid, which could be Scott.
Yeah, so that's the elephant room to go back to some of these tough fixtures. Lerma's profile is not in the squad at the moment.
No.
And that's got to be a concern, hasn't it?
Yeah, we haven't got that player that other teams like to hate at the moment.
He is a right shit house, Neil, honestly. He really is.
Yeah.
You can agree with me now, because every time we mention him, I say it.
Yeah. I mean, again, he's the player that you love him when he's on your team, but everyone else hates him. So yeah, there is a big gap there in midfield. I suspect Cook will be the deeper player of the two, with Billing being more advanced. But what I would say is I expect him to be deeper than he perhaps was at times last year, where he was more of that sort of, I guess, number 9. Whereas I suspect he'll be a little bit deeper this year, as it stands.
So I actually think Billing might end up being the deepest player. And the reason I think that is, again, it's coming back to this left-sided bias. And one of the constant quirks of Rayo tactically was left back, push on as quickly as possible. And if you will, your left-sided 6 of a double pivot drops into that position. Something we'd seen not last year, but we used to see Xhaka do it a lot for Arsenal. So Kieran Tierney would go and Granit Xhaka would just drop into like left back for Arsenal. And I'm thinking about the profile of players you've got. I'm thinking, well, who within that Bournemouth squad can perform that role? Now, was a natural left footer and a good technical player. Billing profile-wise, he's probably the most adept to do it. Like, if it was into right back, I think, oh yeah, that's fine with Cook, can do that. So left back, not convinced, because your body shape's in the wrong position when you receive and pass.
Yeah. That makes sense. The only reason I've put Cook deeper is he's played more like historically that's where he's played for us. But no, I can certainly appreciate that. It would be really interesting to see where Scott or whoever that additional midfielder may be. I think there is a real and one of the reasons that we signed, we've made some of the moves up top that we've made is we've lacked left-footed players. So I believe Cliver is. Don't quote me on that, but I'm sure I heard that in one of the interviews that he favours that side.
Yeah, it's a profile problem because you don't really want Philip Billing doing that job. Is the counter. No. And to clarify the point, we're talking within possession here. It might be the out possession. Cook is deeper. Yes, quite possibly.
Yeah, and the reason I would put Billing a little bit more advanced. Exactly as you said, his profile as a player is you want him arriving late in the box to
It's a
kind of
10, really. It's
yeah.
probably his best role.
But at the moment, I would say Christie's in that role.
Yeah, I was hoping you're going to say that because I think he's really interesting at
I like
5 million, actually. If you had
yeah.
better fixtures, is that who you think plays that position?
At the moment, yeah, I think so.
I think he's the most suitable for it as well because he's comfortable drifting to left or right, and you don't use zone 14 essentially. It's a little quirk and a little bit bizarre. So we're going to get this left-sided bias, we think, but also basically all the attacks build to wide areas. So the job of the 10 is essentially to move into half space areas and join in and create overloads in both wide areas. So he operates from a starting 10 position, but you won't see him centrally on the ball so much, is the way it looks like it's going to work out. And I think he's really suitable for that role, actually.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And because he can play anywhere along that line anyway,
It's
naturally,
natural
that's
for
his
him.
natural game. He will be happy doing that. He can play at wing, he can do all of that. So yeah, I completely agree. I think he also enjoys, and the role that player will have is picking up these balls that we're going to look to get back from the byline and put them in, and be that finisher. Now, I'd love to have Billing in that role, but I don't think, as currently constructed, it could be him. It has to be Christie, or it could be Brooks. Brooks is the other one that
How
perhaps
is
you could
he?
put there. He's looked really good this so far.
Good. That's really positive to hear.
He'll be really involved this year.
Okay. I think Christie's, again, if you had better fixtures, I would be really tempted by that.
But what it does do, because our midfield and that setup is going to change between now and the end of the transfer window, it does give us time to have a pause and understand exactly what's going to happen. By the time our fixtures break, and I guess what the wild card's 8 normally. I mean, I know it's whenever people feel like really this year, but traditionally people like to do it around about then, don't they? When all the international breaks and stuff
Yeah.
starts to go
Well,
off.
listen, if it is about that period, we've spoken about that a few times this week with the likes of Liverpool, Villa coming
Yeah.
to, I mean, particularly Liverpool swings sort of game week 9. There's a few swings around there. And if suddenly you're going, oh, I need to fit Salah and Trent in with Haaland, people like Christie at 5.0 with your own swing could be particularly handy.
Clivert would be the other one at that price. He's 5 as well, that I would have interest in as it stands. Because again, the left side bias.
I'm less keen. I did a piece last week, which included a predicted lineup. I didn't have him in it. Actually, I actually had the other name you mentioned, Jaden Anthony, potentially starting. So interested to get your thoughts on that. You think probably Clivert gets the nod?
At the moment, yeah, I think so. Just again from what we've seen, and I think the other really interesting thing to watch about Clivert, as it stands, we don't have a Solanke replacement really. I mean, I know there's Semenyo, but what I have seen in pre-season is he has taken Solanke off and has put Clivert up top just to sort of let him practice in that position.
Okay,
And
that's interesting.
he's mentioned that he believes Clivert can play there. It's not his best position, and it was very clear. But in a pinch, if Solanke goes down, Clivert then becomes an out of position forward, so midfielder as a forward, which
Okay,
that's definitely worth noting.
just while we're touching on that, Kiefer Moore is going to go. We think he's been linked back, removed to Cardiff, possibly.
I think I suspect what will happen, and it will totally write off what I've just said about Clivert, is we will sign another striker.
Oh, that's useless now.
But as it stands, we haven't done that. So
Antoine Semenyo was bought for good money in January. He's in at 4.5. Raised a few eyebrows. Chance of minutes?
Not. It would be off the bench if it was.
Get that, but there isn't a clear 4.5 who's going to start anyway. So, but you're saying if something happened to Solanke, it's probably not him starting anyway.
I wouldn't imagine so. Not from what we've seen in pre-season.
God, I'm really struggling to find one of these that's good.
I'm sorry.
4.5 up front. Right hand side. Now, I'm going to guess that you think Dango Otara will start.
Yes.
And I agree with that. And I think, again, he's another really, really interesting one to keep an eye on at 5.0. One interesting note, though, very much of this lean that Rayo had meant that quite often they played with someone on the right-hand side who was more of a central player rather than an equivalent out-and-out winger. So big responsibility to get off the flank and into more central areas. Now, by that, I don't necessarily mean get out front with Solanke. I mean come into midfield.
Yeah.
Profile-wise, he's not that player, is he?
No, but no, no, he's not. The thing that I like about him with the system that we are going to play is he is absolutely rapid,
I know
and
that,
there
mate.
will and there will be times when we do that. We go into that direct mode, and the left side might be isn't going to be an option, and we're just going to give it to Atara, and he will just go. And is when he gets exciting, I think. But yeah, I see why if you've got that left side bias to pack the centre, which
Yeah,
again we've seen because they try and drag it back.
because what you got to be cautious of when you think about it is you're asking Christie not to operate in central roles. You're asking for him to move into wide areas. So if you are building on the left side, you've got Kerkez pushing up, you've got Christie going for the overload, and you've got Billing dropping in from a central where if it's Billing, it could clearly be someone else into a left back position. So if the person on the right hand side don't come in and help, if there's a turnover and it goes central, you're dead. Because you've just got, let's say, Cook. He's there on his own.
Yeah.
So that's why there's a real responsibility normally in his setup for someone on the right to really come in centrally. It's part protection, actually.
Yeah, and that may be where someone like Brooks comes in because he is a bit more. He can play in that central role, and he's naturally a right winger as well. The other player that we've not mentioned that he's not so much a winger, but he's more central would be Traore when he comes back. Well, he's back now, but when he starts to play.
More offensive, though, isn't he?
Yes.
See, I've wondered, and I agree with you. I think Otara will start, and it might be that they, it becomes something new where we're looking at more quick switches of play, and you can isolate and get him 1-on-1. It's quite intriguing. I wondered if you might play like Rothwell out on that side, just to give it a bit more balance.
We've not. It's not something I've seen him
fine.
do yet, but yeah, I mean, Rothwell is actually the other option to play a little bit deeper anyway. He's not so fond of that, but he plays anywhere in that sort of around the centre circle.
Yeah, from everything I forget the name of the player who played there on the right for Rayo, but he was so integral to what they did on and off the ball. And Otara just doesn't fit that profile. So I'm intrigued by it because I agree with you, though. I still think he'll start. I'm intrigued by it. And like with Christie, it's 5.0. It's a very interesting price, as it is with Kluivert. And it may even prove that Jaden Anthony at the same price. The same. Yeah. If you had to start one in 5.0s, who would you start with?
I toyed with having Kluivert just because of that left side bias at the moment. But as you said, there's not really any interest because of the fixtures. But I think that would be who I would go with.
I think it'd be Christie for me.
Okay.
But I'm not that confident that he plays the 10 position. Just I think he's the one that'd be the most suitable for it as it stands.
I think that is where if he's in the 11 versus West Ham, that will be where he sits. But it is just until we know who that third midfielder is going to be, because that will totally change it, I suspect. Because as I said, I would love to see Billing there. That's Billing's best position for me, arriving like just after Solanke in the box and batting it in from eight yards out. Lovely.
You couldn't make a case to start with Billing at 5.5 over those fives. I think you'd rather pump one to 5.0s, wouldn't
you? Yeah. Unfortunately, I think he's a little bit expensive versus those ones.
What's the Marcus Tavernier situation? Because he's a player we really like, but he keeps getting injured, mate.
He does. Yeah. It's a different injury this time, which is that good? I don't know. It's not. He doesn't have the same recurring injury. We've just let Stanislas go this summer, so someone's got to occupy our keep Frederick's company. I guess it's a real shame though, because I really liked having him.
Yeah, we do like him. Me and Sij mentioned him. There's a few times he came straight back in the team when you had a good result, right, really quickly, and he was involved in some very important moments for you last season. Yeah. But before we mention, we can't not mention the talisman because at the time of recording, as said, it's Thursday morning. And a lot of people have got out of bed this morning and realised they've got two forwards in their FPL team who are both injured. And Christopher Nkunku needs assessment. We know Gabriel Jesus is definitely going to miss game week 1 as long as Mikel Arteta is telling the truth. You've got a talisman there at 6.5 who knows going to play up front. If you had better fixtures, a lot of people talking about him right now.
I agree. Yeah. And Solanke's is a little bit of a dilemma anyway, purely because he is not a natural goal scorer, really, which is really bizarre to say for a striker. But I think he had something like 8% chance conversion or something, like absolutely hideous last year. And it is quite frustrating as a Bournemouth fan. But actually, that's kind of not his role. His role is almost, I guess, a false nine, where he sort of sits back and lets the wingers come round him, and he acts and holds up play and does he does so much for the team, which is why it's quite frustrating when I see Bournemouth fans, being like, oh, we need to get rid of him. And I was like, well, yeah, but he does a lot more for the team and allows the other players around him to score, which is almost as important. Now, I know you want a striker that puts the ball in the net, of course you do, but he does so much more, and he does get assists and things like that. Or unfortunately, from a
Highest
fancy
in FPL for forwards last year, most assists.
Yeah. Well, there you go. He gets a lot of assists, which unfortunately in FPL doesn't do much for you. But yeah, exactly. And I think that will continue because what I can see happening is, as I said, the running in from the byline. Solanke will perhaps be that first player that the ball comes to, and then he may lay off a pass to a Billing or someone like that, or he may have a shot that then something happens and then Billing piles it in or whatever it might happen. And he gets assists that way. Theoretically, he's still our penalty taker as well, but who knows?
Why is that? Who knows?
Well,
Did you not get one last season, right?
Did I not mention that?
Never.
It's been, 4 managers since we had a penalty in the Premier League?
Good job, Gary O'Neill didn't start the season. It might have been 5, mate. I tell you what I think on Solanke's interesting, that all the things you say, I don't disagree with any of them. But when I reflect on the things we have discussed about tactically, and a lot of his good work in terms of channels and dropping short and all these sort of things, I'm not sure he's going to be asked to do them. I think a lot of his role might just be staying within the penalty box. Now, that could be good and it could be bad. And the reason I say bad is A, easy to pick up, and B, if you look at the forwards at Rayo, weren't prolific by any means. So I think it's a narrative you can spin either way. And I just think he gets added to the list. Unfortunately, despite being a talisman, with them fixtures, it becomes a watch and wait. Do you have any consideration for Neto as a keeper?
I have had, yes. I think he's a good shot stopper and actually did quite well. I had him towards the end of last season, before we decided that we were on the beach, and actually did quite well purely because of the volume of shots that he was getting. Now, I suspect that will drop off a little bit, the sheer volume, because O'Neill's style was very much let them shoot, but don't let them have low calorie shots. I suspect we will see more, like we've said, where they'll come round and he'll have to perhaps be a bit more of a mopping it up, which we'll see. He is a little bit older. Maybe that isn't quite his game, but I still think he'll do quite well. But I'm not jumping on him.
All right, cool. Good stuff, Neil. Thank you so much, mate. Where do you think we will finish this season?
14th.
That sounds brave.
I think there's a lot to get excited about with Bournemouth. I don't think we will be in the relegation battle come the last month or so. I think we'll be relatively well clear of that, but I'm not. I think it's too soon for us to start really pushing up the table. I think that will come later because we've got such a young squad.
How many of the correspondents do you think predict you to go down?
6.
5.
Yeah.
A lot of that is there's obviously high proportions for Luton, Sheffield United, and then it's throw in one extra. And I do think that's a little helpful to you, particularly as well with the big change you're having, that it does feel like there might be a little bit more leeway unless one of those two clubs particularly surprises and excels.
Yeah.
I've got you for 15th at the moment with a caveat, a couple of caveats. One, if it doesn't work and it takes too long to adjust and that start is as bad as it might be, you might find that you're stuck down there for a while. And depth of key injuries could be a real issue if you lose the likes of Solanke, etc. But the other part of the caveat is I think you might really surprise this year. I think if you get this right with the manager, I think he's got clear principles, a lot, I would say, more ingrained than many of the other managers in the bottom half. And I think it gives you the capability to finish even as high as 11th or 12th.
Yeah, that's why I'm picking 14th, because I think we could be anywhere in that sort of bottom half. But again, there's so much of this exciting young talent, and there's a lot of ifs in this next statement. But if they play to the ceiling that we think they can play to, I mean, this is going to be one heck of a season. And I don't think we're done yet in the transfer window as well. And we will continue to push. And I think there'll be at least one more signing that players that players of the of FPL and the wider football community go, oh, like they did with Kerkez.
Yeah, I think you're going to be fun, and he needs watching really closely at the start of the season.
100%.
Thank you very much, Neil. Anything you want to plug before you go, mate?
No, nothing.
Top stuff. We're about to find out how fit and Kunku is or isn't. Actually, no, we won't, because we'll be recording 24 hours in advance. But next up on Correspondent Week is Gary and Chelsea. And I suppose he's going to want to talk about Maurizio Pochettino as well. Just leaves me to say thanks so much to Neil. Good luck for the season, my friend. Cue music, please, man child.